Okay, so we're starting on the 20th page of 12 Patients' Life and Death at Bellevue Hospital. I have a 1 hour timer on the iPad and it should go off when it's time. So, yeah, 1 hour starting right now. Bending over a file at the nurse's desk, a middle-aged, diminutive Afro-Caribbean woman. She emanates calmness and authority. The escalating curses of a patient being wheeled to his room cell down the hall behind her do not even seem to register. She looks up and smiles at me, buds in with the patient. We reminisce about the old prison unit in the administration building at Bellevue before the new hospital was built. No one wanted to go there. It was made of wide open wards typical of the time. I already did this. Trying to figure out. Where we are. She decides to walk me through the unit to the waiting room. As we go, she tells me about a retirement party a few weeks earlier at Bellevue where a woman spoke of her first job on the prison unit when she was 18. She had called the prisoner by her number, blah, blah. Alright, let's just start on this paragraph, because we already passed some of that. My beeper goes off several times, and I retreat to the nursing station for a phone, a computer, and a modicum of quiet. Medical Director Ed Fishkin from Brooklyn's Woodhull Hospital is on the line about our lack of ICU beds and their inability to transfer 3 patients who have been waiting for more than a day. A young woman who has Flashapuram malaria after returning from Southeast Asia, and she is in her 3rd trimester of pregnancy and cannot breathe. We need an ICU bed and a team from high-risk OB, pulmonary, and critical care medicine right now. The next call is from my daughter, Marina, inviting me out to dinner at a small bistro on 1st Avenue, our usual place when Diana is out of town giving a lecture. Marina was back after a post-BA year studying in Israel and was settling into a new job in Midtown. Sometimes the 5 of us would go out, including my son, Alexi, I don't know, I'll just call him Alex, I think, or whatever, who lives in Brooklyn with his wife, Gladys. Diana complained that all the best family dinners happened when she wasn't around, but she understood and appreciated the family support system. After getting an ICU bed, I made a call to the prosecuting attorney's office and tell her assistant about the urgency. I promised to email the attorney. I put in a few words like justice and the American way, and my friend at the New York Times in hope of hurrying this along. I report into Patty. Jeff, I have a turkey sandwich on your desk for when you get back. Down here. She then puts through my voice messages. All routine except the one from Diana sending me hugs and kisses from Santiago. Plus, she's found me the perfect novel by Felicia Lentz and pulsating Valenado, recommended by her friends in Colombia. Our long-standing tradition from our innumerable travels. She finds the most interesting book everyone is talking about in the CD you cannot live without. I wind my way back through the gate and pick up my cell phone, and then head back to the office. Too late, I remember the sanctimonious Dr. Flores is waiting. He'd been in several times in the past couple of weeks already, complaining that another department was poaching on his area. As new technologies have developed, several departments, not frequently with a monopoly source of income has been losing ground on what they see as their immutable rights to turf. Interventional cardiology with catheterization has reduced the volume of bypass surgeries dramatically worldwide. There are financial winners and losers in the financial game. One second. Whoa, guys, we're gonna pause this timer, and I'll pause it. Something I need to do real quick. My mom needs something. Well, I guess this can be a quick thing for you guys too. So, yeah. In the dark. Sorry. So, yeah, I guess right now, what I'll do is, you just go down here, and I'll show you how to make a shortcut on Chrome. So, my mom's wanted a thing. So, I need to start recording. So, yeah, so if you want to put like a shortcut to Outlook on your desktop, on like your toolbar, here, I'll show you, so. Because my mom's work is moving to like all online and like Office 365 and stuff. Just kind of annoying. So yeah. Guess I don't need a cord because I can just tell her. You're kidding me. Okay, still good. On Chrome. Right click on an empty it's sorry guys, this is a hindrance. Click on the 3 dots in the upper right hand corner. Click create, hover over more tools, click yay shortcut, click create again. icon on your desktop. And click it. Darn it. For the click create shortcut, before that, in the window, click in a new window checkbox. Right, open the app. Right click the icon and press pin to taskbar. Sorry about that. So we can get back to reading. Hey, hi. And we're resuming it. Okay. Now where were we? This is why Faraz was waiting for me. Through inevitability, the tensions would be expressed in terms of quality and patient safety, competency, and so on. I was not sympathetic. Times change. New procedures come online all the time. Departments that try to hold on to things using technical and bureaucratic strategies to control their monopolistic practices are not just hurting themselves. In the long run, they limit the institution's abilities to stay vibrant and adaptive and will ultimately hurt their patients. I'm not in the mood for Dr. Ferez. I just want my turkey sandwich. As I put my hand on the back door to my office, I hear my name called from behind. Beth, the head of the forensics unit, is on her cell phone and waves at me to wait. She listens intently into the phone when she hangs up. She asks me if I have some free time to go with her to CPEP to see a new prisoner who was brought in recently. I think about my sandwich, then look up at her phone and see that Patty has moved the appointment with the Mexican Minister of Health until the end of the day. I think of Dr. Ferez and turn to follow Beth back down the stairs to the ground floor. We wind our way through the back corridors and are stopped by the phalanx of corrections officers. There are the usual officers in blue with holstered guns. Now there are also many in white shirts, and the entire area is blocked off from every direction. We see a single prisoner being led between a squadron of blue and white shirts in front of us down the hall from the blue room to the CPEP entrance. He's the prisoner I saw come in earlier this morning from my office window. He is shuffling in his leg shackles. He looks over at us since we are the only non-guards in his field of vision. He is totally expressionless. His eyes are alive, but he gives away nothing. His tattoos are obvious now, even more chilling since they cover every inch of exposed skin except for the front of his face. His neck bears the letters MS and the number 13. Los Miros Salvatruca. I don't know. The Miros are leagues away from the Crips and the Bloods. They're relatively new to New York. I am familiar with them from my trips to Chiapas, the southernmost state in Mexico near the Guatemalan border. The mayors prey upon undocumented immigrants fleeing north. They will steal and extort everything. They will cut off arms, disembowel, or behead someone for nothing. When the mayors are sent to prisons, they take them over, organize them, terrorize the guards, and train their fellow inmates in their particularly vicious brand of violence. CPEP, where the Mara gang is taken, is very controlled space. New York City police and hospital police stand right outside the door and glass window. The many staff members inside this prison wings are used to dealing with all kinds of difficult situations, particularly violent and unpredictable patients. Taco, as he's nicknamed according to his file, swallowed some silverware at the Supermax prison on Rikers and needs some x-rays in a surgical consult. We have to observe him for a couple of days while things work their way through his system and out the other end. This is a fairly common practice, as we call the patients swallowers. Inmates use this little trick as a way to get off the island and break up the boredom. Our mayor friend says nothing. I'm glad to get out of there and thank my colleague for taking me down with her, though I will have Mayor's pesadillas nightmares for a few weeks afterwards. I head back to my office as my beeper goes off. Bud, I called up. Guerrero isn't eating. Won't allow anything in the tube either. His wife and son are beside him. I say I'll be up. Late in the afternoon, the rituals of getting into 19 South is compounded by the rush for elevators, the waiting, pushing, shoving off all those in a hurry to go up or down. After I make it to the floor, Bud takes me to Guerrero. He looks gray, if anything. He has aged since this morning. He looks up to me wary and looks down at his shoes again, bent over as he is with his shoulders and his knees. His wife and son looked alarmed. What's up? I ask him. I'm sick, Doc. How come you're not eating? I'm afraid I'll throw it up. It'll hurt. You have to eat, Guerrero, or you're going to get weaker. You need all the strength you have for this. We'll use your stomach tube now exclusively to feed you, so no worrying about swallowing at all. You will teach yourself how to swallow when you're stronger. Your throat muscles will learn again. He looks at me. It doesn't matter. Girl, don't give up now. You'll be home soon. You have to save your strength for your treatment. Don't make it harder for your wife and your son. Girl looks up again and stares at each of them. Okay, bring it on. The wife attaches the syringe to the plastic outlet on the tube that dangles from just above his belly button. Her first time feeding him. He pours in the insure. He holds her hand as the liquid goes in. Good, I say. You'll both have to learn how to do the feeding and look after the equipment. It's not hard. You'll get the hang of it. Small amounts 6 times a day, and slow feeds overnight by the pump. That's it. I smile at them as I leave. Back in the office, I put on some music and make myself a coffee. I email Patty for an update, but I ask her to give me a few minutes if possible. I sit and look out the window. I'm suddenly furious. Why is something like Juan Guerrero's treated the same way as the Mara? When did mental illness and petty drug possession offenses become equivalent to major crimes? The psychiatric patients need mental health care. Guerrero needs cancer treatment at his home with his family, and Taco needs to be locked away in the Supermax. Not that imprisonment will deter him from continuing the terrible things he has done. There are now at least 10,000 Samaritans and their deadly offspring spread from LA to Long Island. Do we really need to finance an incubator for more? Why are so many people with such a wide range of problems sent to prison as a one-size-fits-all solution? If our goal as a society is to lock people up and throw away the key, then there's a genius to the 3 strikes law. If the goal is to make us feel safer and create a society that is healthier and more productive, then we have failed miserably. I pull my thoughts back to the present when Patty calls. Guerrero's papers have been signed, and he's being released within the hour. She also tells me that the young woman in the SICU with the severe brain injury from her motorcycle accident has died. Normally Patty wouldn't call me about this, but the body was left in the room for 6 hours before being claimed by the medical examiner, headquartered just a block north of the hospital. The family flew in from Italy, not only bereaved but irate over the lapse. They're saying they won't be able to get their daughter home for a proper burial. I tell Patty I'll phone the parents and apologize profusely after speaking with the attending and getting details from him. The Ministro de Salud of Mexico has arrived, she adds, and will be up in 5 minutes. I look at the building encroaching on my view. The steady thread of cars heading north on the FDR. One of them will soon have Juan Guerrero in the backseat with his wife and son on their way to the Bronx in a future they can't anticipate. Will he even complete his treatment? This thought starts to burrow its way into my brain. I reel it in and turn off the heart-aching photo music of Dulce Pontes as I get up to greet Mexico's Minister of Health. 46 minutes left. Chapter 2, Tanisha. The walk from Bushwick in North Brooklyn had taken several hours. Ice-cold air and slushy snow on the streets had the effect of another dose for Tanisha. She had climbed down the fire escape outside the window in her room when commercial garbage trucks were making their pre-dawn rounds. Her hand was freezing against the oxidized and flaking bare metal that scraped raw the skin on her palms. 3 flights down and then a 15-foot drop to the sidewalk. By the time she was at the bottom hanging from the rusty bottom rung, her 5'1" frame left her with a mere 10-foot controlled fall. It was 4 o'clock in the morning and the streets were empty. A flickering street light reflected off the snow and ice. She could see the barbershop sign as she hung for a few seconds. The lights of a 24/7 bodega, El Eminencer, on the corner were nearly hidden in a cloud of steam from a sidewalk vent. She let go and dropped, hardly making any noise when her Converse All-Stars hit the cement. She remained in a crouch, rubbing her ankles for a few seconds. Tanisha was 16, pretty with braided hair that hung to her mid-back. She had bundled herself in several t-shirts, a sweater, and an extra-large Yankee sweatshirt, along with jeans layered over pajamas. She headed toward Myrtle Avenue a few blocks away. Carefully scanning the streets, a few lone cars drove past her as she made her way. Her breath turned white. She was glad it was freezing. Unlikely anyone would be hanging outside. She had stayed too long at this foster family's apartment. She knew it from the placement there exactly 4 weeks ago. The caseworker from the Administration of Children's Services had taken her in a car with another worker. It had been her 12th foster care placement, almost 1 year since she was born in Kings County Hospital 16 years later. They had arrived in the late morning and a middle-aged woman opened the door, smiled, and welcomed them inside. Tanisha had dropped her guard slightly when the woman, Latita, spoke with a Spanish accent. It had brought her back momentarily to the one foster placement that had been home to her several years earlier. The warmth of the apartment, the radiators had no controls, and the steamed windows made it seem almost friendly. The caseworkers had stayed for almost over an hour, talking to Letitia, introducing Tanisha, and helping unpack the small backpack of what remained of her worldly items. She had a few changes of clothes, a small zip bag for a toothbrush and hairbrush. The senior caseworkers Anna had given I'm not going to even try to pronounce the word after that. Latita 2 plastic pill boxes and gone over the instructions for the timing of the medications and possible side effects. There was a sheaf of paper she had in a plastic binder. She gave Latita a copy of some documents and asked her to sign and date the form. The workers turned to Tanisha, who was sitting quietly at the dining room table, came over to give her a hug and told her she'd be fine here and that they would be by to visit in a few days. The problem started that night. In the late afternoon, Latita's daughter had come home with her boyfriend. They put on the television and ate pizza while talking and ignored Tanisha after a perfunctory introduction by Latita, who promptly left to do some errands. The boy was around 20 and lived upstairs and didn't appear to notice that Tanisha was even in the room. It was after midnight when Tanisha was in bed. She had left the window open only a few inches, since the only way to control the temperature was to let in some cold air. She heard the window scraping against the frame and saw a sneaker and leg enter the room, followed by a young man from the afternoon. The light from the street made it clear who he was even in the shadows. He slid the window open, looked over at her, and took out a switchblade. This wasn't the first time Tanisha had been raped, violated, or abused in foster care, but she had decided it would be the last time. She said nothing to the family the next morning after they banged on the door to the bathroom as she showered under near boiling water for 15 minutes to cleanse her mind and body. The window didn't have a lock. She jammed it shut that morning and a rigged wooden bar so that it could not be opened. She also took a knife from the kitchen and kept it at the side of the bed. She heard rattling out the window a few nights later, again after midnight. The young man came several days a week, and one night she noticed the piece of broomstick keeping the window secure was gone. It was time to get out. When she got to Myrtle Avenue, she turned right under the elevated train. She had gotten directions on the walk to Manhattan from a friendly counter person at the White Castle all-night diner. You go to Myrtle, he said, pointing out the window, and you make a right turn. It is another 15 minutes until you hit Broadway. There's another elevated train there, and you make another right turn. You just walk the length of Broadway, stay under the elevated train. It runs right into Williamsburg Bridge. You can't miss it. You are practically in the East River. It's another world there. You're in another country, he smiled enigmatically while handing over 2 hamburgers and french fries. On the house, chica. Suerte. Good luck. Going good. By the time she got to the 100-year-old bridge, it was past 5 a.m. and the streets were starting to fill up. At first, she was anxious. She could hear all the trains squealing overhead. The early morning risers were going to work. Bundled up against the cold, they barely gave Tanisha a glance, walking quickly to the steep stairs to the M train platform or ducking into the coffee and donut shops that line Broadway in a shadowy, sunless netherworld. She knew she was near the bridge when several men walked along the early morning streets of Williamsburg in long black coats and round brown fur hats with white socks. She had heard about the group of Hasidic Jews, the Satmars. They ignored her and spoke among themselves in a foreign language. An orange school bus idled at the corner, plumes of white exhaust exiting the rear like a surreal post-apocalyptic beast. The door opened and long black coats and fur hats got inside. It took Tanisha a while to find the pedestrian walkway across the bridge. She waited until a group of middle-aged workers, black metal lunch pails in hand, stared across and trailed them by 50 feet. They would be her safety net to the other side. The morning was sparkling, clear and very cold. The wind whipped through her layers. She took the hood tightly around her head and put her hands underneath her armpits. Traffic was picking up. Red tail lights zipped by. Tugboat lights headed up north, up the East River, toward Roosevelt Island. Sparkling yellow lights from Manhattan stretched as far as the north as you could see. Once she was across the bridge, she was in known territory. She had been placed on the Lower East Side 2 years ago. There wasn't a block, bodega, or pizza shop she didn't know in this area. From Delancey Street to 14th Street, Avenue C in Alphabet City had been her home base. It would be good to be out of a Brooklyn she was unfamiliar with. Each neighborhood a crazy quilt of angled streets, different languages, street gangs, drug dealers, hustlers, hipsters, and old folks sitting on their stoops. You had to have your wits about you and stay in your safe zone, or it was a game park. As Tanisha wound her way past the midpoint of the bridge and began the downward slope into Manhattan, her thoughts changed into Spanish. She was back in the house of her abuelita, Mama Lola, as her family called her, abuelita, little grandmother, as the 6 young girls called her, wards of the state in foster care, in a group home run by Mama Lola and her adoring husband, Hugo. He drove a livery car or gypsy cab 15 hours a day, as the price of gasoline had inched its way up and cut into his weekly take-home pay. Abula always said her husband was an exception to Dominican men. He has 1 wife and 1 family, and he is a loving man. I found that one in my town. As her legs carried her down the slope, she ran, through in her mind the families and group homes she had lived with over the years since she had a memory. Of her mother, she had no recollection, or whatever, and there virtually no information was shared with her or perhaps known. All Tanisha knew about her mother was that she was a Latina drug addict. Crack was her drug of choice. She had several other children, all in foster care removed by ACS. When she had left Tanisha when she was a child with some crack sisters, and a neighbor called 911. After the police arrived and found a 6-month-old girl in a filthy rug, they brought the baby to St. Barnabas Hospital in the Bronx. ACS was notified and traced the mother to the Rose M. Singer Women's Prison at Rikers Island. They worked through the legal system to have Tanisha removed permanently from her mother's custody and given her long record of drugs and abandonment and prostitution. Tanisha's mother had been a victim herself of a mother who had been a gang member, drug user, and petty dealer who didn't actively abuse her children so much as neglect them. Feral was the term ACS used in a report that had been shared with Tanisha by a social worker when she was a young teenager. Tanisha had no idea what feral was. She had thought it was an animal, a pet tiger. The Smiths were the first family Tanisha remembered. They were a black Jamaican couple with 6 youngsters under their care. Tanisha was 4 years old. They were benign with children. There was food on the table and the kids were bathed and kept clean, dry, and warm. They slept in one large dormitory room with the door open. The husband came home from driving a city bus and sat in the front of the television and sipped a bottle of rum out of a brown paper bag. His personality went from quiet to calm to an animal growl with a few sips of brownish liquid. Tanisha could still hear his voice penetrating the walls in the open door. "Get your fucking ass in here, bitch. Get your fucking ass in here right now." The yelling, the cursing, the screaming. Door banging and throwing would cease around midnight when he could be heard snoring. The thunderous snores were punctuated by large apneic pauses where he ceased to breathe altogether. And then the rumble would begin after some horse-like snorts. The kids would finally get to sleep between nightmares and bedwetting. One day, a dozen ACS workers showed up at the apartment with several official white vehicles idling in the streets. The children were all packed up and taken away. 2 workers accompanied each child. Miss Smith was nowhere in sight. Mr. Smith was driving his bus. They were all taken to a large shelter somewhere in Brooklyn. By the time Tanisha was 7, she had been in 7 different residential homes and foster families, plus a few shelters and ACS distribution facilities. She remembered her first hospitalization as she reached the bottom of the bridge and kept walking down Delancey Street. She stopped at a Dunkin' Donuts on the north side of the street. This was an old hangout, and she was glad it was still here after so many years. There was already a line in the front of the counter where some Indian woman presided over the coffee and donuts. She settled in a window seat, warming up for a few minutes. At age 7, she became unmanageable. When the foster family had called 911 when she attacked another foster child who hit Tanisha and called her a bitch. Something had flipped and continued to flip without any warning signs. She would be fine, then suddenly hypervigilant. Something would snap, and later she had no recognition of what happened, except that some adults were holding her down, sitting on her, injecting her buttock with Haldol that put her to sleep or left her extremely dopey in a dreamlike state. She had once been taken to the emergency room at the local hospital. After hours of sitting on a stretcher with the bored woman in Laurie brown scrubs looking at her, reading the paper, and talking to her boyfriend on her cell phone. She was admitted to the inpatient pediatric unit. The other kids had diabetes, pneumonia, influenza, epilepsy, asthma, and mental retardation. Tanisha remembered the doctors who talked to her 2 days after she was admitted. He took her into a quiet room, with the social worker taking notes at his side. There were toys in the room. Tanisha asked if she wanted to play with toys or draw. She refused to talk to the man, who looked bored and tired. She was hungry and asked for food. They said after she drew them a picture. She sat and waited them out. After a month of unit visited by social workers, psychologists, and occasional psychiatrists and ACS workers, she was transferred to another foster family. A succession of families followed, interrupted by shelter stays when the families disintegrated in a shower of police calls, domestic violence, drug dealing, and ACS investigations. As Tanisha pushed out the door of the Dunkin' Donuts and headed north, she thought she glimpsed a man she had pushed to the back of her mind, but could never forget. She kept an eye out for him instinctively, a habitual roving third eye. There were many times when she thought she saw him in a crowd, on the subway or a bus or across the street. She was always prepared to lose herself, make herself disappear, or, if necessary, take her own life. The Brown family had been gracious and welcoming. The children, all four of them, were teenagers, well-dressed and well-behaved. The house was spotlessly clean, with old but well-maintained furniture that shone after being polished every week. The children did their homework in the evenings, and then were allowed some television time before going to bed. Chores were divided up evenly and listed in rotation on a board in the small kitchen. Garbage, dishes, laundry, and bed-making, tidying up, washing the kitchen floor. It all seemed too perfect. Tanisha's symptoms has been better, and she didn't have a flip out more than a couple times. Lester Brown liked to read to the children at night. After a few months, he had asked Tanisha if he could read her a special story. His wife was in the bedroom with a migraine and had taken a sleeping pill. He and Tanisha were in the living room alone with the reading light on, a blanket covering them. He placed Tanisha on his lap and opened Dr. Seuss. He whispered in her ear, and she felt something hard between his legs as his breathing accelerated as he moved more rhythmically. She sat and totally still as the large man panted in the ear, then clutched her to him in a spasm that seemed to last forever. He made her change her pajamas before he put her in the bed, whispering, "You're my favorite, Tanisha. We'll read together again, just the two of us. Let's keep this our secret." Tanisha pushed open the doors to the ACS intakes building just off of 1st Avenue at 6:30 a.m. The building was just north of the main entrance to Bellevue Hospital and part of the original sprawling hospital complex. The morning shift was starting to stream in through the front doors. The rectangular silver food carts were jockeying for position on both sides of the avenue. Delivery trucks were triple parked, and an FDNY ambulance hung in a hard right turn down the main emergency room entrance. She was patted down for drugs and weapons, and then fed and bathed. The senior administrator knew her well and stopped by to welcome her. After 6 hours of evaluation and innumerable phone calls, 2 workers occurred to the Bellevue emergency room. The child psychiatry emergency room had bright colors, flat television sets, and a glass-enclosed nursing station. A nurse and a health tech escorted Tanisha into a private exam room. They asked her to undress and gave her some hospital-issue pajamas to wear on the unit. They told her that she could have her own clothes back later. They had searched her carefully and discreetly as she handed her the tops and the bottoms in a bathrobe. This wasn't a new routine for Tanisha. She had been through it almost a half a dozen times before. In her own mind, she had run out of options and had to find the safest place possible. I was having lunch with Francisca Durat, at the on-call child psychiatrist, when she was beeped urgently to the emergency room to see the new admission. We had been deep in this discussion of experiences with childhood trauma. She was French Algerian. And here, let me check on time. Because at 2 o'clock, I'm going to take a break and pause it. But then we'll be right back, I swear. And we had been talking about her years working in the banlieues or immigrant ghettos, ringing in Paris. The populist anger, economic deprivation, racism, and religious intolerance that had led to riots in the suburbs of Paris resonated loudly in the post-9/11 New York City. The overhang from a decade of foreign wars, failure to resolve immigration issues, globalization's domestic efforts, and the growing unemployment inequality was creating combustible domestic politics here too. We walked back to the child unit together, and I asked if I could sit in on intake interview. Tanisha showed no emotion when I shook her hand and asked if she minded if I sat in with Francesca. She nodded okay. Looking me directly in the eyes, it made me feel vulnerable. The 16-year-old, 5'1" Dominican hardened teenager with a thick Bellevue chart from multiple hospitalizations, evaluations, ER visits, and psychological testing was rapidly sizing up. The two adults in the room who would be evaluating her and making some determination about her future. I switched roles with Tanisha and felt the weight of a chart on all of us. The caretakers over her lifetime. What secrets, tragedies, and small mercies were buried in its pages. I had canceled my afternoon and asked Patty not to put through any calls unless there were true emergencies, and even then to come down and get me, since I turned off my phone and beeper. The consultation room was a corporate back office, a cell with a windowed door leading to an outer vestibule. We sat there for nearly 3 hours while the psychiatrist tiptoed into Tanisha's life. She was very smart with a sharp wit and gradually became more spontaneous and talkative. Monosyllabic answers gave way to short responses. Why did you run away from the foster home in Bushwick? I did not run away. I left of my own free will at a time of my choosing. I never ran. Sorry, I didn't mean run away in that way. Why did you leave? Francesca practically whispered this time. She was getting quieter and softer as Tanisha was getting more assertive. It was as if there was a scale in the room for effect or emotion. As Tanisha heated up, Francesca turned down her emotional volume. Carefully calibrated, Tanisha responded, ACS has sent me to so many shitholes with so many assholes that want to fuck with me or fuck me. Why? Just who should you be interviewing? Tanisha did not blink for a long time. She held us in her gaze and kept us there. This was not a usual kid in a crisis who was melting down in a rage-filled episode of acting out, cutting herself homicidal or suicidal. You could feel her intelligence in the small room. She had a special education plan or IEP that had put her in small classes with other disturbed adolescents. Most of the kids in these special programs had low to normal intelligence. Many were severely retarded from drugs, or alcohol in utero, and many of the sheer intellectual deprivation, and many from sheer... Good puppy? Deprivation. Socially isolated. The parents of many of these children were themselves marginally illiterate. The level of stimulation in a home was limited to shouts, obscenities, and a 24/7 blasting television. I do have a plan to kill myself, she answered in response to another question to Francesca. What is your plan, Tanisha? Have you had these thoughts recently? Doctor, I had a plan for my long time if things didn't work out. If I cannot get out a back door, I won't tell you my plan. Then it wouldn't be a plan, would it? I mean, it wouldn't be my plan. It would be our plan. I don't have hardly anything at all in my life. Every time I get moved from foster care, I lose half my stuff and the other half gets ripped off. Like I have nothing except what I have in my head. If that motherfucker had made it into the room again, I would have killed him or myself or both of us. That's for fucking sure. Jeez, Tanisha likes cursing. After a few hours of conversation with Tanisha, I felt spiritually dehydrated, like everything has been sucked out of me. It was like watching an accident over and over again in slow motion. Kids like Tanisha are trapped. They will die, and there's nothing you can do to save them. You cannot keep playing that script over in your head without hurting yourself. I had gone through her chart before going into the room, and had a sense that a form of soul death was foretold for this young girl. What were her chances of making it out the other side of childhood? It's probably best for me. I take a too so my voice gets better. Emotionally intact, considering what she had been giving. Tanisha's diagnosis at admission was provisionally depression with suicidal thinking secondary to PTSD or post-traumatic stress syndrome. There had been a million social risk factors listed in the diagnostic categorization. Every box is checked off. She had not given her medication by her family. She made it clear that she would have taken it under any circumstances, since the medications made her. She wouldn't have taken it under any circumstances, since the medications made her feel worse and gain weight. She had been on an antidepressant and antipsychotic medication used to augment or improve the effectiveness of the antidepressant. I had seen the drug advertised on television, in popular magazines, and on the subway. PTSD is a diagnostic category that emerged from the Vietnam War in the 1970s when the war was grinding its way to a close. The range of symptoms seen among returning vets did not fit other categories of mental illness. The cluster of symptoms were not just depression, not simple anxiety, nor related to the use of drugs or alcohol. The PTSD complex includes flashbacks of the traumatic events, extreme vulnerability, irrational fears, nightmares, depression mixed with anxiety and rage. Vets were placed on cocktails of prescription medications with mixed results. As the diagnosis became widely accepted and many millions of dollars were invested into the federal government to understand the syndrome or disease better, PTSD was made an official disease in 1980. This is 2,700 years after Homer described the effects of war on his warriors in his majestic Iliad. Recently, the category was being refined to fit kids who have been subjected to violent or abusive events. Some kids who witnessed parental abuse and violence, or had been physically or emotionally abused, became emotionally unhinged. Tanisha lost control of her emotional regulators. She couldn't think her way out of a flash emotional discharge. Her emotional centers were hijacked. Ordinarily, children learn how to control their emotional states. This is one of the major tasks of childhood. When kids are subjected to trauma during vulnerable developmental periods and make them children and not many adults. They miss the developmental of emotional control. This emotional dysregulation flows through many childhood disorders. It's almost a universal symptom. Tanisha described a fleeting anxiety. I'm going to stop on this paragraph, guys, so we're done with that. So yeah, I'll be back. I need to pause the timer. We have 18 minutes and 43 seconds when we get back. So yeah. Another scene. My mic setting was all the way down. Oh my god. Why was that down? Why? That's great. That's great. Wow. I guess I'll see you later, guys. Jeez.